The whiteboard equation had stumped 20 MIT engineers for 6 straight weeks. It was worth $100 million, and possibly the entire company. But on a freezing Tuesday night in March, while the suits slept in their penthouses, a man in a gray janitor's uniform stopped mopping, picked up a discarded marker, and changed 3 lines of code. By morning, Mercer Dynamics would never be the same. Neither would Gavin Brooks. This is the story of the janitor who refused to stay invisible. Before we begin, stay with me until the very end of this story. You won't believe where it goes. And drop a comment with your city below so I can see how far this journey travels across the world. The fluorescent lights of Mercer Dynamics' 20th floor hummed like dying insects at 11:47 p.m. Gavin Brooks pushed his yellow mop bucket past the executive conference room, the wheels squeaking against the polished marble, a sound he'd long stopped hearing after 3 years of night shifts. His back ached. His daughter Lena's school permission slip sat unsigned in his jacket pocket. And tomorrow, like every tomorrow, would start with too little sleep and too much instant coffee. He was 34 years old and invisible. Dad. Lena's voice echoed in his memory from that evening. She'd been sitting at their cramped kitchen table, her math homework spread before her like a battlefield. Mrs. Patterson says I'm really good at patterns, like really, really good. Just like your mom, he'd whispered, kissing the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. She saw patterns in everything, even in people. Lena had looked up at him with those devastating brown eyes, Sarah's eyes. Do you miss being smart, Dad? The question had hit him like a fist to the sternum. Do you miss being smart? As if intelligence was something you could lose like car keys or hope. I'm still smart, kiddo, he'd said, forcing a smile. I'm just using it differently now. But the truth was darker, wasn't it? He'd been more than smart once. He'd been brilliant. Full scholarship to MIT at 16. Published his first paper on neural network optimization at 19. The kind of prodigy that made professors nervous and venture capitalists salivate. Then Sarah got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic. 8 months from diagnosis to goodbye. By the time he was 25, Gavin Brooks had buried his wife, dropped out of his PhD program, and was raising a 2-year-old alone. The algorithms could wait. Lena couldn't. Now, nearly a decade later, the algorithms had moved on without him. Gavin stopped outside the conference room. The lights were still on, unusual for this hour. Through the glass walls, he could see the aftermath of what must have been a war. Coffee cups everywhere. Crumpled papers scattered like casualties. And that massive whiteboard covered edge to edge in what the executives probably thought was genius. It wasn't. He shouldn't look. He had 7 more floors to clean, and Mrs. Chen from building management had already written him up twice for lingering. But something about the equations pulled at him, an old muscle memory, like a pianist's fingers twitching at distant music. Gavin glanced down the hallway. Empty. He set down his mop and stepped inside. The conference room smelled like desperation and expensive cologne. Someone had written "Crisis Mode, Day 47" on a smaller board in the corner. Gavin moved closer to the main whiteboard, his cleaning rag still clutched in one hand, and began to read. It was an AI learning model, he could see that immediately. Something about predictive analysis and neural pathway optimization. The kind of thing Mercer Dynamics specialized in. But whoever had built this had made a fundamental error in the 3rd layer of the algorithmic structure. They were treating the data nodes as independent variables when they were clearly interdependent. The whole thing was like... Gavin's eyes scanned faster now, like trying to teach a child to walk by, only strengthening one leg. His heart began to pound. Without thinking, and God, he'd regret this later. Gavin picked up a red marker from the tray. His hand moved across the whiteboard, making 3 quick corrections. He crossed out the original coefficient, rewrote the integration formula, and added a feedback loop that should have been obvious to anyone who actually understood how learning systems worked. There, he muttered to himself. That's how you finish that sentence. Gavin spun around so fast he nearly dropped the marker. She stood in the doorway like a force of nature wearing Armani. Sloan Mercer, CEO, founder's daughter. The woman whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune with headlines like "The Ice Queen of Innovation" and "Silicon Valley's Most Feared Leader." She was 36, Stanford MBA, and according to office gossip, had once made a senior vice president cry during a quarterly review. She was also objectively stunning in that severe, untouchable way that made men stumble over their presentations. Dark hair pulled back so tight it could cut glass. Cheekbones that could have been carved by someone who understood geometry. And those eyes, gray-blue, calculating, currently boring into Gavin like lasers. He was so fired. I'm sorry, Ms. Mercer. I was just cleaning and you changed my board." Her voice was cold, precise. She walked into the room, her heels clicking like a countdown. "That equation has had 23 people working on it for 6 weeks. Engineers with PhDs from Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, Berkeley. But you," she gestured at his uniform at the name tag that read, "Gavin, Custodial Services. You took one look and decided to play mathematician." "I shouldn't have touched it." Gavin set the marker down carefully as if it might explode. "I'll clean it off right now. I apologize, Ms. Mercer. It won't happen again." "Stop." She held up one hand. "Don't clean it." Gavin froze. Sloan moved past him to the whiteboard so close he could smell her perfume, something expensive and subtle, like money and midnight. She studied his corrections for what felt like an eternity. Her finger traced the new formula. Then she pulled out her phone and began typing furiously. The silence stretched. Gavin's mind raced through scenarios, security escorting him out his last paycheck. How he'd tell Lena they needed to move somewhere cheaper, maybe leave the city entirely. "It works." Sloane's voice was barely a whisper. "What?" She turned to face him, and for the first time since she'd walked in, her expression wasn't rage. It was something else. Something dangerous. "Your correction. I just ran it through our test environment. The model that's been broken for 47 days, that's cost this company $106 million in delayed contracts, works now." She took a step toward him. "Who are you?" I'm the janitor." "Don't be stupid. Janitors don't rewrite quantum learning algorithms in under 3 minutes." Her eyes narrowed. "What's your background?" Gavin felt his stomach drop. This was the conversation he'd been avoiding for 3 years. The one where his past collided with his present, where the person he'd been mocked, the person he'd become. "I used to study this stuff," he said quietly. "A long time ago. Before it didn't matter anymore. Used to study where MIT. Something flickered across Sloane's face. "MIT. You studied AI at MIT and now you're mopping my floors." "Life happens, Ms. Mercer." "Don't give me philosophy, give me facts." She crossed her arms. "Why aren't you using that brain for something more than cleaning toilets?" The anger surprised him, hot and sudden, rising from a place he'd thought he'd sealed off years ago. "Because my daughter needed a parent more than the world needed another genius," Gavin snapped. "Because health insurance and regular paychecks matter more than publishing papers. Because some of us don't get to choose between our dreams and our responsibilities, we just wake up and do what needs to be done." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Sloane's expression didn't change, but something in her posture softened. Just slightly. Just enough. "What's your daughter's name?" she asked. The question threw him. "Lena. She's 9. "And her mother?" "Died 7 years ago." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't know her." Gavin picked up his mop. "Look, Ms. Mercer, I really do need to finish my shift. I'm glad the equation helped, but I shouldn't have touched your board. It won't happen again." "You're right. It won't." Sloan pulled a business card from her jacket and held it out. "Because you're going to be in the executive conference room tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. That's not a request, Mr. Brooks. That's a direct order from someone who just watched you solve in 3 minutes what my entire R&D department couldn't crack in 6 weeks. Gavin stared at the card like it might bite him. I work nights. I have to get Lena to school at 8:30. Bring her. We have a daycare on the 3rd floor. Best in the city. We poached the director from Google. Sloan's voice turned sharp again, commanding. 8 a.m. Wear something without a name tag. And Brooks. Yes. If you're half as smart as that whiteboard suggests, don't waste my time pretending to be less than you are. I have no patience for false modesty. She walked out without another word, leaving Gavin standing in the conference room, holding a mop in one hand and a business card in the other, his entire world tilted on its axis. He didn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m., after finishing his shift, Gavin sat in his car in the parking garage and Googled Sloan Mercer. The articles painted a picture of a woman who'd inherited a struggling tech company from her father and turned it into a billion-dollar empire through sheer force of will and ruthless efficiency. She doesn't suffer fools, one profile noted, and she considers most people fools. There were rumors, too, about the executives she'd fired on the spot, about the time she'd walked out of a board meeting because someone suggested she smile more, about how she worked 16-hour days and expected everyone else to do the same. And yet, she'd asked about Lena, about Sarah. Those questions hadn't been in the playbook of a corporate ice queen. At 6 a.m., Gavin stood in his tiny bathroom staring at the one suit he owned, bought for Sarah's funeral, and worn only twice since. It still fit barely. He looked at his reflection and barely recognized the man staring back. Dad, Lena appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Why are you wearing the sad suit? It's not a sad suit, baby. It's a professional suit. You look weird. Are you going somewhere? Gavin knelt down to her level. Remember how I told you I used to be really good at math and computers before you were born? Lena nodded, suddenly alert. Well, something happened last night. Something strange. I think someone wants to give me a chance to do that kind of work again. Really? Her face lit up like Christmas. So you could be smart at work again instead of just smart at home. He pulled her into a hug. I'm always smart, kiddo. But yeah, maybe I could use it differently. Will you still have time for me? Always, no matter what. You're my number one, Lena. Nothing changes that. Okay. She pulled back and studied his face with that unnerving perception 9-year-olds sometimes had. But Dad, you're shaking. He was. His hands trembled as he adjusted his tie. I'm just nervous. Don't be. You're the smartest person I know. She said it with such absolute certainty that Gavin felt tears prick his eyes. The executive conference room at 8 a.m. was nothing like it had been at midnight. Now it was filled with people, 20 of them, maybe more, all in expensive suits and designer glasses, clutching tablets and looking exhausted. They barely glanced at Gavin when he walked in holding Lena's hand. Daddy, everyone looks grumpy, Lena whispered. Professional, he corrected. They look professional. Grumpy professional. A woman in her 50s approached them with a warm smile, the first smile Gavin had seen in this building that didn't feel calculated. You must be Lena. I'm Margaret from the childcare center. We have art supplies and a reading corner with beanbags. Sound good? Lena looked up at Gavin. He nodded. I'll come get you in a bit, okay? Okay. Don't let them be mean to you, Dad. You're smart. Margaret led her away, and Gavin was left standing at the edge of the room, feeling like an imposter in his own skin. Excuse me. A man in his 40s with perfectly styled hair and a watch that probably cost more than Gavin's car brushed past him. The custodial staff entrance is on the 5th floor. I was invited here. The man's eyebrow arched. By whom? By me. Sloane's voice cut through the room like a blade. Every head turned. She stood at the head of the conference table, wearing a different suit but the same expression of controlled authority. "Everyone, this is Gavin Brooks. He's the reason we're all here this morning instead of explaining to our board why we lost the Henderson contract." Confused murmurs rippled through the room. "I don't understand," a woman with red-framed glasses said. "Who is he?" "He's the person who fixed the algorithm you all couldn't." Sloan gestured to the whiteboard, Gavin's corrections still visible in red. "Last night, in approximately 3 minutes, Mr. Brooks identified and corrected the core error in our neural learning model, the same model that 23 of our best engineers have been failing to debug for 6 weeks. The room erupted. "That's impossible." "Who is this guy? Sloan, you can't be serious. Where did he come from?" "Enough." Sloan's voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. The room fell silent. "Jason, explain to everyone what happened when you ran the corrected code through testing this morning." The man who'd dismissed Gavin earlier, Jason, apparently looked like he'd swallowed glass. "The model? It worked? Perfectly. Better than our projections, actually. The learning curve improved by 43%. More silence. Then everyone started talking at once. Sloan held up her hand. "Mr. Brooks studied AI and neural networks at MIT before personal circumstances changed his path. He's been working night custodial here for 3 years, during which time he's apparently been the smartest person in this building, and we were too blind to notice." A younger man with a beard spoke up. "No offense, but how do we know he actually understands what he did? Maybe it was luck. Maybe—" "Test me." Gavin heard himself say it before his brain caught up. Every eye in the room turned to him. His heart hammered, but Lena's voice echoed in his head. "You're the smartest person I know." Sloan's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." Amanda put the Patterson project up on the screen. A woman frantically began typing. The wall-mounted display lit up with code dense complex, the kind of work that would take Gavin's old self hours to parse. But he wasn't his old self anymore. He was better, because now he knew what really mattered. "It's a classification problem," Gavin said, stepping closer to the screen. His voice grew steadier. "You're trying to teach the AI to recognize patterns in user behavior to predict purchasing decisions. But you're overcomplicating it. Look." He pointed to a section of code. "You don't need 7 layers of abstraction here. Human behavior isn't that mysterious. We're creatures of habit of repetition. You're treating every decision like it's unique, when really there are only about 15 core motivational patterns." 15, Jason scoffed. "That's reductive." "No, it's observational." Gavin turned to face him. "I've spent 3 years watching people in this building. The executive who always gets the same coffee at the same time that's consistency-seeking. The programmer who walks the stairs when she's stressed, physical comfort and routine. The night security guard who chats with me every shift about his grandson connection through familiar interaction." He looked back at the screen. "Your code treats every user like a snowflake. But we're more like my daughter's class. 30 kids all different, but they all respond to the same basic needs: recognition, safety, curiosity, belonging. Model for that, and you'll predict behavior much more accurately." The room was silent again. But this silence felt different. Amanda spoke first, her voice tentative. "That's actually brilliant. If we restructure the classification system around core motivational patterns instead of individual action sequences, the processing load would decrease by at least 60%. Another engineer finished, and the accuracy would probably increase because we're working with actual human psychology instead of trying to mathematically map chaos." Sloan was watching Gavin with an expression he couldn't quite read. Anyone else want to test him? For the next hour they did. They threw problems at him: coding errors, theoretical frameworks, system architecture, challenges. And Gavin answered them all, not with the language of academia, but with the language of life. He explained machine learning, using the way his daughter's brain developed language. He compared neural networks to water, finding the path of least resistance through pipes. He made the complex simple without making it simplistic. And slowly, reluctantly, the room full of PhDs began to listen. At 10:30, Sloan called a break. The executives filed out, still buzzing with conversation. Jason lingered near the door, his expression dark. "Ms. Mercer, a word?" Later, Jason. "This is important. You can't seriously be considering." I said later. Her tone could have frozen lava. Jason left. Gavin stood awkwardly by the window, looking out at the city he'd stopped seeing years ago. "I should probably go check on Lena." "In a minute." Sloan approached, and for the first time that morning, she looked almost uncertain. "That was extraordinary what you did in there." "I just answered some questions." "You dismantled 6 weeks of work and rebuilt it better in under an hour, using metaphors about your daughter and plumbing." She shook her head. "Where have you been, Brooks?" "Right here, mopping your floors." "For 3 years." "Yeah." "Why didn't you apply for a position in R&D or engineering? You had to know." "I didn't know anything." Gavin turned to face her. "You want the truth?" "Ms. Mercer, I barely had the energy to apply for the custodial job. My wife had just died. I had a 2-year-old who had nightmares every night. I needed health insurance immediately, and I needed a schedule that wouldn't require daycare I couldn't afford. The night shift paid $1 more per hour and came with benefits. So I took it. And then days turned into months, turned into years, and at some point I just forgot I used to be someone else." Something in Sloan's expression cracked, just for a moment, just enough to let something human through. "My father had dementia," she said quietly. "At the end. He forgot he'd built this company. Forgot my name. Forgot everything except that he liked chocolate ice cream and old jazz music." She looked away. "The mind is a fragile thing. Genius is even more fragile. I'm not a genius, Ms. Mercer. You solved a $100 million problem in 3 minutes. I saw a pattern. That's different." "Is it?" She met his eyes. "I want to offer you a position. Senior consultant in the AI division. You'd work with our R&D teams, help debug complex systems, maybe even lead some projects if you're interested." Gavin's breath caught. "I don't have a degree. I never finished my PhD." "I don't care about your credentials. I care about results." Sloan pulled out her phone. "The starting salary would be $200,000. Full benefits. Flexible schedule. I understand you have child care considerations. You'd report directly to me until we figure out exactly where you fit." $200,000. Gavin's current salary was $38,000 a year. That's more than..." "It's what you're worth. Actually, it's probably less than you're worth, but it's where we'll start." Sloan studied his face. "You're terrified." "Wouldn't you be?" "No, but I'm not you." She softened her tone slightly. "What are you afraid of, Brooks?" He could have given her the easy answers, failure exposure proving he couldn't do it anymore. But something about the way she asked without judgment, with genuine curiosity, made him tell the truth. "I'm afraid of wanting it too much," he said. "I'm afraid of caring about something other than Lena again, and then failing at both. I'm afraid that if I step back into that world, into being someone who solves impossible problems, I'll stop being the dad who knows exactly how she likes her sandwiches cut, and which nightlight makes her feel safe. I'm afraid of losing myself again, but differently this time." Sloan was quiet for a long moment. "I work 16 hours a day," she finally said. "I've sacrificed relationships, friendships, any semblance of a personal life. Everyone thinks I'm heartless. Maybe I am. But you know what I've never had? I've never had someone look at me the way your daughter looked at you this morning. Like I was the most important thing in their universe." She moved closer. "Don't become me, Brooks. Take the job, but do it your way. Set your boundaries. Leave at 5 if you need to. Bring Lena to work sometimes. Show these people that brilliance doesn't require martyrdom. You really think I can do this? I watched you do it for an hour. The question is, do you think you can do this? Gavin looked out the window again at the city waking up below. Somewhere down there was the tiny apartment where he and Lena ate breakfast, the bus stop where they waited together on cold mornings, the life he'd built from the wreckage of loss, small, quiet, safe. But Lena's voice whispered in his memory, "Do you miss being smart?" Dad. Maybe it was time to show her that being smart and being present weren't mutually exclusive. Maybe it was time to stop being invisible. "Yes," Gavin heard himself say. "Yes, I think I can." Sloan extended her hand. "Then welcome to Mercer Dynamics, Mr. Brooks. The real version this time." He shook it, and something shifted in the universe, small and quiet, like the first crack in winter ice. That afternoon, Gavin sat in HR signing paperwork, while Lena drew pictures at a desk nearby. She'd made friends in the childcare center, a boy named Marcus, and twin girls named Sophie and Claire. "Dad," she called out. "Is this our new normal?" "I think so, kiddo." "Cool." She went back to her drawing. "Marcus says his mom is a programmer here. She knows Python and Java and something called Ruby. Can you learn Ruby?" "I'm sure I can try." "Good, because I told him my dad was the smartest person in the whole building, and he said that was impossible because his mom was. So now you have to prove it." Gavin laughed, really laughed for the first time in longer than he could remember. "No pressure then." "You got this, Dad." And standing in the doorway watching them, without them knowing, Sloan Mercer felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Not for the company, not for the bottom line. Hope that maybe she'd been wrong about what it took to build something meaningful. Hope that somewhere in the wreckage of this ruthless industry, there was still room for people who chose love before glory. Hope that the janitor who'd changed her whiteboard might change everything else too. Monday morning, Gavin Brooks walked into Mercer Dynamics wearing a suit that actually fit, bought over the weekend with Lena's enthusiastic help. And for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't carrying a mop. He was carrying a future. And somewhere above him, in her glass office overlooking the city, Sloan Mercer watched him walk in and thought, "This is going to be interesting." She had no idea how interesting it would become. The first real test came on Tuesday morning, his second day as senior consultant, when Jason cornered him in the break room. Gavin was making coffee, the cheap kind from the communal pot, not realizing yet that executives had their own espresso machine on the executive floor when Jason appeared beside him like a storm cloud in a $1,000 suit. "Brooks, we need to talk." Gavin turned cup in hand. "Good morning to you too. Let's skip the pleasantries." Jason's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "I've been with this company for 8 years. I have a PhD from Carnegie Mellon and 3 patents to my name. So I'm going to give you some free advice. Don't get comfortable." "Excuse me?" "You had a lucky moment. You saw something we missed because we were too close to it. That happens. But Sloan has a history of getting enthusiastic about new projects and then losing interest when the novelty wears off." Jason leaned against the counter, his posture casual but his eyes sharp. 3 months from now, maybe 6, you'll be back to mopping floors. So don't go buying a Tesla just yet." Something hot flared in Gavin's chest, but he kept his voice level. "Is that what you tell yourself? That it was just luck? What else would it be? You don't have the credentials, the experience, or frankly, the right to walk in here and act like you belong in rooms you haven't earned access to. I solved your problem. You found one error. Congratulations. My 5-year-old nephew once pointed out a typo in my code. Should I hire him too?" Jason straightened up. "Here's the reality, Brooks. This world runs on degrees and reputation. You have neither. And when Sloan realizes that her little social experiment is making the actual engineers uncomfortable, you'll be gone." Gavin set down his coffee cup, carefully fighting the urge to throw it. "You done?" "Almost. One more thing." Jason's voice dropped lower. Stay away from Sloan. She's the CEO, not your friend. Whatever you think is happening between you two, those little moments in meetings, the way she actually listens when you talk, it's not real. You're a novelty, a curiosity. The janitor who could. Don't mistake her professional interest for anything else." Before Gavin could respond, a voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Jason, my office. Now." They both turned. Sloan stood in the doorway, and her expression could have flash-frozen the sun. "Ms. Mercer, I don't care what you were just. My office. Now means now." She looked at Gavin, and her voice softened fractionally. "Mr. Brooks, when you're done with your coffee, we have the Henderson team arriving at 9. I'd like you there." She walked away. Jason followed, looking significantly less confident than he had 30 seconds ago. Gavin stood alone in the break room, his hands shaking slightly. The coffee tasted bitter now. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't let Jason get in your head. He's scared. People who are scared say stupid things. SM." Gavin stared at the message. Sloan Mercer had his phone number. And she was defending him, encouraging him. He typed back, "How much of that did you hear?" Her response came immediately. "Enough. Get to conference room A in 20 minutes. And Brooks, Jason's wrong about almost everything, but he's especially wrong about you being a novelty. Now drink your terrible coffee and get ready to impress some very important clients." Despite everything, Gavin smiled. The Henderson meeting was a masterclass in corporate warfare, and Gavin learned quickly that he'd stumbled into a battlefield he didn't fully understand. Henderson Technologies was considering a $30 million contract with Mercer Dynamics for AI-driven supply chain optimization. They'd been on the fence for weeks, spooked by the algorithm failures that had delayed the project. The Henderson team, 3 executives who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog for corporate power players, sat across the conference table with expressions of polite skepticism. Leading the Mercer side was Amanda Chen, the chief technology officer, flanked by Jason and 2 other senior engineers. And then there was Gavin, seated slightly to the side, feeling utterly out of place. Ms. Mercer did. The lead Henderson executive, a man named Richard Paulson, began. "We appreciate you taking the time to address our concerns personally. But I'll be direct, our board is nervous. The delays, the setbacks, the very public struggles your team has had with this project, it doesn't inspire confidence." Sloan didn't flinch. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Paulson, which is why I've brought in our best people to explain exactly how we've not only resolved the issues, but improved the system beyond our original specifications." Amanda launched into a technical presentation that would have made most people's eyes glaze over. Charts, graphs, performance metrics, algorithmic efficiency ratios. It was impressive, thorough, and utterly bloodless. Gavin watched the Henderson team's faces. They were bored, trying to hide it, but bored nonetheless. 20 minutes in, Richard interrupted. "This is all very impressive on paper, Ms. Chen. But our concern isn't about the technical specifications. It's about real-world application. We need to know this system won't fail when we're dealing with actual supply chains, actual warehouses, actual human error." Amanda faltered. "Well, the simulations show. Simulations aren't reality." An awkward silence fell over the room. Jason shifted in his seat, looking ready to jump in with something equally technical and equally unhelpful. Gavin heard himself speak before his brain approved the decision. "May I?" Everyone turned to look at him. Sloane's eyebrow raised slightly, but she nodded. "Mr. Paulson, you're absolutely right. Simulations aren't reality." Gavin stood up, feeling every eye in the room on him. "I'm Gavin Brooks. I'm new to the team, but I spent the last 3 years working night maintenance in this building. And I learned something important during those years. Systems don't fail because of code. They fail because of people." "I'm not sure I follow," Richard said, but he was listening now. Actually listening. Your supply chain it's like the plumbing in a building. You can design the most perfect pipe system in the world, but if the guy in apartment 3B keeps flushing things, the whole system backs up. The pipes aren't the problem. The behavior is. Gavin walked to the whiteboard. Our AI doesn't just optimize your logistics. It learns from human patterns. It predicts when your warehouse manager in Memphis is going to order extra units because he always overcompensates in Q4. It anticipates when your shipping coordinator in Newark is going to route trucks differently because there's construction season. It adapts to the humans in your system, not despite them. Richard leaned forward. Give me an example. Okay. Last week I was cleaning the executive floor around midnight. Security guard named Marcus came by. He always does his rounds at 12:17 like clockwork. But that night, he was 12 minutes late. You know why? Because there was a homeless woman sleeping in the parking garage, and Marcus spent 20 minutes making sure she had somewhere warm to go before he continued his route. A traditional security system would flag that as an anomaly, a failure in protocol. But a smart system, a really smart system, would learn that Marcus's routes vary based on human need, and that actually makes the building safer, not less safe. He turned back to the Henderson team. Your supply chain has hundreds of Marcuses. People who make judgment calls, who adapt to circumstances, who sometimes break protocol for good reasons. Our AI learns those patterns. It doesn't fight human nature. It works with it. The room was silent for a beat. Then two. Then Richard Paulson smiled. That's the first thing anyone said in this meeting that actually makes sense. Tell me more about how the system handles unexpected human variables. For the next 40 minutes, Gavin talked. Not about code or algorithms or processing power, but about people. About the warehouse worker who always double-checks shipments on Fridays because his brother once lost a job over a miscount. About the truck driver who takes the longer route to avoid the highway where his daughter had an accident. About the 1,000 tiny human decisions that make up the invisible architecture of any real-world system. And the Henderson team ate it up. When the meeting ended with Richard shaking Gavin's hand and saying, "I think we can move forward with this contract," Jason looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Sloan walked the Henderson executives to the elevator, personally leaving Gavin alone with the Mercer team. "Well," Amanda said. And for the first time since Gavin had met her, she was smiling. "That was unexpected. And brilliant. Where did you learn to read a room like that?" "Single-parent survival skills," Gavin said. "You learn pretty fast how to figure out what people actually need versus what they say they need." "Fair enough." Amanda gathered her materials. "For what it's worth, Brooks, I'm glad you're here. Jason might not be, but the rest of us are." She left. The other engineers followed, offering nods of acknowledgement that felt like small victories. Jason was the last to leave. He paused at the door, his expression unreadable. "That was a good presentation." "Thank you." "Don't let it go to your head. One good meeting doesn't make you indispensable." He walked out. Gavin stood alone in the conference room, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Held his own in a high-stakes meeting with people who had every right to doubt him, and he'd won them over. His phone buzzed. "Sloan." "My office. 5 minutes." When Gavin knocked on Sloan's door 5 minutes later, she called out without looking up from her computer. "Come in and close the door." He stepped into what was essentially a temple to minimalism and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A desk that looked like it cost more than his car. Art on the walls that was probably original and definitely expensive. And Sloan seated behind her desk like a queen on a throne, finally looking up at him with those piercing gray-blue eyes. "Sit." Gavin sat. "That meeting," Sloan said, "was supposed to be a formality, a reassurance session to keep Henderson from walking away. Instead, you turned it into a sales pitch so compelling that Richard Paulson told me in the elevator that he wants to expand the contract by 40%. 40% Brooks. Is that bad?" It's $12 million in additional revenue. So, no, it's not bad. It's exceptional. She stood up and walked to the window, her back to him. Do you know why I really brought you into that meeting? To see if I could handle it. To see if Jason was right. She turned around. He's been whispering in corridors, telling anyone who'll listen that you're a liability, that your success with the algorithm was luck, that you'll embarrass the company the first time you're in front of real clients. Her expression hardened. I wanted to prove him wrong, and you did it for me. I just told them the truth. You made complex systems comprehensible using a story about a security guard. You connected with them on a human level that none of my engineers could manage. Sloan moved back to her desk, leaning against it. That's not luck, Brooks. That's a skill. A rare one. Gavin felt heat creep up his neck. I don't know what to say. Say you'll do it again. Next week we have the Carlyle Group coming in. Bigger contract, higher stakes. I want you leading the technical presentation. Leading Ms. Mercer, I've been here 2 days. And in those 2 days, you've solved a $100 million problem and secured a $12 million expansion. How long exactly do you need before you're qualified? She smiled, a real smile this time, small but genuine. I don't care about tenure, Brooks. I care about results. And you get results. What about Jason, Amanda? They have seniority. They'll adjust. Sloan's voice went flat. Jason especially needs to learn that this company doesn't belong to him. It belongs to whoever brings the most value. Right now, that's you. The weight of her confidence was almost crushing. What if I mess up? Then you mess up. But here's what I've learned in 10 years of running this company. The people who are afraid of messing up rarely do anything interesting. The ones who take risks, who trust their instincts, who speak truth even when it's uncomfortable, those are the ones who change things. She moved closer, and Gavin could smell that subtle, expensive perfume again. Don't be afraid of your own potential. It's insulting to both of us. Their eyes met, and for a moment something unspoken passed between them. Not attraction, not yet anyway, but recognition. Two people who'd learned to make themselves smaller than they were, suddenly seeing each other fully. I should get back to work, Gavin said, standing up quickly. Before you go. Sloan pulled a folder from her desk. I had HR put together some resources for you. Childcare schedules, family health insurance options, information about the company's education fund. We provide college savings matching for employees' children. I thought Lena might benefit. Gavin took the folder, genuinely touched. You didn't have to do this. You have a daughter who depends on you. That matters. A lot of companies forget that their employees are whole people with whole lives. I'd rather not be one of those companies. She paused. How is Lena adjusting, by the way, to the new schedule? She loves it. She's already making friends, and apparently the art supplies here are way better than school. Gavin smiled. She drew you a picture yesterday of a tall lady with smart eyes. Something softened in Sloan's face. Smart eyes. Her words. She said you have eyes that see everything. Perceptive kid. The most perceptive. Gavin headed for the door, then turned back. Ms. Mercer. Thank you for believing in me when you had no reason to. I had every reason to. You showed me who you were in 3 minutes at a whiteboard. Everything since then has just been confirmation. She sat back down at her desk, already turning to her computer. Now get out of my office, Brooks. Some of us have actual work to do. But she was smiling as she said it. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and late nights spent learning systems he'd forgotten existed. Gavin threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised even him. Every morning he dropped Lena at the childcare center. She was thriving there, making friends, and learning things that made her bounce with excitement when he picked her up. Every evening they'd have dinner together, do homework, and he'd read her to sleep before returning to his laptop for a few more hours of study. He was exhausted. He was exhilarated. He was alive in a way he hadn't been since Sarah died. And he was spending more and more time with Sloan. It started innocently enough. She'd need his input on a project, and they'd end up talking for an hour about system architecture and human behavior. Or he'd have a question about company protocols, and she'd invite him to her office, where the conversation would drift from business to philosophy to surprisingly personal territory. "Why did you stay?" he asked her one evening. They were alone in the conference room, the city lights glittering below them, working on the Carlisle presentation. It was nearly 8 p.m. "Stay where?" Sloan looked up from her laptop. "Here, running this company. You could do anything. You're brilliant. You're driven. Why this?" She was quiet for a long moment, and Gavin thought maybe he'd overstepped. Then she spoke, her voice softer than usual. "My father built this company from nothing. He was difficult, demanding, never satisfied. But he believed in the work, believed that technology could make people's lives better if wielded correctly." She closed her laptop. "When he got sick, everyone expected me to sell. Cash out, move on. Board members had buyers lined up, but I couldn't do it. Because for all his faults, my father was right about one thing: what we build matters. How we build it matters more." "So you stayed to honor him." "I stayed because someone had to care more about the work than the profit, and I was the only one angry enough to fight for it." She met his eyes. "What about you? Why did you give up MIT? Really?" Gavin leaned back in his chair. "I didn't give it up. It was taken from me. Sarah got sick so fast. Pancreatic cancer is like that. One day she was fine, the next day she wasn't. 6 months from diagnosis to hospice. I spent that time choosing between lectures and chemo appointments, between research and just holding her hand while she threw up from the treatments." His voice roughened. "The choice wasn't hard. But afterward, when she was gone and I had Lena going back, felt impossible. How do you focus on theoretical frameworks when you have a 2-year-old crying for her mother? How do you care about publishing papers when you're just trying to figure out how to braid hair and pack lunches? You couldn't. No, I couldn't. So I found work that had clear boundaries. Clock in, clock out. Take care of my daughter. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, but it was the life Lena needed." Sloan was quiet, studying him with those perceptive eyes. "Do you resent it? The sacrifice?" "Never. Not for a second." Gavin said it with absolute certainty. "Lena is the best thing I've ever done, the smartest choice I've ever made. Everything else is just details." "I envy that," Sloan said quietly. "Envy what?" "The certainty. Knowing exactly what matters most and never questioning it." She stood up and walked to the window. "I question everything, every decision, every priority, every relationship. It's exhausting." Gavin joined her at the window. They stood side by side, reflections ghosting in the glass. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "Please." "You're not as cold as you pretend to be. The Ice Queen thing, it's armor. I get it. But underneath, you're someone who remembered to ask about my daughter, who set up childcare benefits without being asked, who gave a janitor a chance when every logical business decision said not to." He looked at her. "You care. You just don't want anyone to know it because caring makes you vulnerable." Sloane's reflection in the glass showed a flicker of something: surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You barely know me, Brooks." "I know enough. I know you work 16-hour days not because you're heartless, but because you care too much about getting it right. I know you're harder on yourself than on anyone else. I know—" He stopped himself. "What?" "I know you're lonely, and you don't have to be." The words hung in the air between them. Sloan turned to face him directly now, and in the dim light of the conference room, she looked younger, less certain, almost fragile. "Gavin." It was the first time she'd used his first name. "We should probably stick to professional boundaries." "Probably," he agreed. but neither of them moved. "You work for me." "I know. This is complicated." "Everything worth doing is complicated." She smiled a real full smile that transformed her entire face. "When did you become so wise?" "Somewhere between learning to French braid and figuring out that bedtime negotiations are basically hostage situations." He stepped back, giving her space. "But you're right. Professional boundaries. I should go. Lena needs dinner, and I still have to review the Carlisle materials." "Gavin?" She stopped him as he reached the door. "Thank you for seeing me. Not many people do." "Maybe they're not looking hard enough." He left before either of them could say anything else. But as he rode the elevator down, his heart was pounding, and he knew, absolutely knew, that something had shifted between them. Something dangerous and wonderful and completely impossible. The next morning, Jason was waiting at Gavin's desk. "We need to talk about your conduct with Ms. Mercer." Gavin set down his coffee. "Excuse me. I saw you two last night, in the conference room, alone, until 8:30. Jason's smile was poisonous. "That's not appropriate, Brooks. She's the CEO. You're a consultant. There are protocols about fraternization. We were working on a presentation. Is that what you call it?" Jason leaned in closer. "I'm going to give you one warning: stay in your lane. Sloan Mercer is not interested in anything other than your brain. The sooner you accept that, the less humiliating your inevitable exit from this company will be." "Are you finished?" "Not even close. But I'll save the rest for when you screw up. And you will screw up, Brooks. People like you always do." Jason walked away, leaving Gavin standing there with rage simmering in his chest. That afternoon during the Carlisle presentation, Gavin killed it. Absolutely destroyed every doubt, every objection, every concern. He spoke about their AI like it was a living thing that learned and grew and adapted. He made dry data sing. And when the Carlisle CEO shook his hand and said, "You've got yourself a deal," Gavin felt Jason's glare burning into his back. Later, Sloan found him in the break room. The good one this time on the executive floor. "You're making enemies," she said without preamble. "Just one, and he made himself my enemy long before I gave him reason. Jason's dangerous. He has allies on the board." "Are you worried?" "About you." "No. You can handle yourself." "About what he might try to do to undermine you." "Yes." She poured herself coffee from the expensive machine this time. "Watch your back, Brooks." "I always do." She turned to face him, and in her eyes he saw something he hadn't seen before: genuine concern. Not professional, personal. "Don't let him make you doubt yourself. You belong here." "I'm starting to believe that." "Good." She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "Keep believing it." After she left, Gavin stood alone in the break room, staring out at the city he'd once stopped seeing, and realized with absolute clarity that he was falling for his boss. And that terrified him more than anything Jason could do. The realization that he was falling for Sloan Mercer should have made Gavin more careful. Instead, it made him reckless. Over the next 2 weeks, he found excuses to stay late when he knew she'd still be in her office. He volunteered for projects that would put him in meetings with her. He laughed at her dry observations about board members and found himself studying the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking hard about something. It was dangerous and stupid and completely inevitable, like watching a car slide on ice and knowing the crash was coming, but being powerless to stop it. Lena noticed first, because of course she did. "You smile at your phone different now," she said one morning over breakfast. Gavin looked up from his emails. "What?" "When Ms. Sloan texts you, your whole face changes. It's like..." Lena scrunched up her nose, thinking. "Like when Marcus's mom talks about his dad, kind of soft and happy and scared at the same time." "I don't smile different." "You totally do. Sophie noticed too. She says her dad smiled like that before he asked her mom to marry him. Lena took a bite of cereal, completely casual. Are you gonna marry Ms. Sloan? Gavin choked on his coffee. What? No, Lena, she's my boss. We work together. That's all. Okay. Lena shrugged, but her smile suggested she didn't believe him for a second. But if you did marry her, could we live in one of those tall buildings with a doorman? Sophie's building has a doorman named Raymond, and he gives her chocolate on Fridays. We're not moving. We're not getting married. Can we please just eat breakfast like normal people? We're never normal people, Dad. You're too smart, and I'm too cute. Despite everything, Gavin laughed. You're definitely too cute, and too perceptive for your own good. But that night, lying in bed after Lena was asleep, Gavin couldn't stop thinking about her words. The soft, happy, scared smile. The way his heart jumped whenever Sloan's name appeared on his phone. The fact that he was 34 years old and hadn't felt this way since Sarah, and the guilt that came with that realization, was almost crushing. His phone buzzed. Sloan. Still awake. He shouldn't answer. It was nearly midnight. But his fingers were already typing. Unfortunately. You, in my office. The board wants a full report on Q2 projections by Friday, and I'm nowhere near done. Want company? I could bring coffee. There was a long pause. Then, you should sleep. You have Lena in the morning. She sleeps until 7. I have time. Another pause. 4th floor. My office. Don't tell anyone you're coming. 20 minutes later, Gavin walked through the empty building, so strange to see it without his mop and bucket, and found Sloan's office door open. She was at her desk, hair down for once, shoes off, looking more human than he'd ever seen her. You came, she said, sounding surprised. You asked. I didn't ask. I just mentioned where I was. Seemed like an invitation to me. Gavin held up the 2 coffees he'd grabbed from the all-night place on the corner. Peace offering for interrupting your work. Sloan took one, their fingers brushing. That soft, happy, scared feeling exploded in Gavin's chest. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Sloan reviewing reports, while Gavin helped organize datasets she needed. At some point, she stood up to stretch and walked to the window, coffee in hand. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? She asked quietly. Gavin joined her at the window. Every single day. I was supposed to be a professor. Did you know that I wanted to teach to research to stay in academia forever? She smiled, but it was sad. My father got sick and suddenly I was running board meetings and making decisions that affected thousands of people. I was 26 and terrified and pretending I knew what I was doing. You did know what you were doing. You turned this company around. I turned into someone I don't always recognize. She looked at him. Then you showed up with your mop and your red marker and reminded me what actual intelligence looks like. Not corporate strategy or profit margins. Just seeing what's in front of you and knowing how to fix it. Sloan. I'm going to say something unprofessional, she interrupted. And you can pretend I didn't say it tomorrow if you want. But right now at midnight in an empty building, I need you to know that you've changed everything for me. The way I think about this company. The way I think about what matters. The way I... She stopped shaking her head. Never mind. This is inappropriate. Say it anyway. She met his eyes, and in that moment all the armor was gone. Just a woman who was tired of being untouchable. The way I think about myself. Around you I remember that I'm not just a CEO. I'm a person who can laugh and doubt and want things that have nothing to do with quarterly earnings. Her voice dropped. And that terrifies me, Gavin. Because I don't know how to be both. I don't know how to run this company and also be someone who... what? Who wants you to kiss me right now more than I want the Henderson contract? The confession hung between them like lightning about to strike. Gavin's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it. Sloan, if I kiss you, everything changes. I know. You're my boss. There are rules, protocols. Jason will use this against both of us. I know that too. And I have Lena to think about. I can't be reckless with her life, with her stability. Gavin? Sloan's hand found his. I'm not asking you to be reckless. I'm just asking you to be honest. Do you feel this too, or am I completely misreading? He kissed her, cut off her words with his lips, and it was like falling and flying at the same time. Her hands came up to his face, his arms wrapped around her waist, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, the taste of coffee on her lips, the soft sound she made against his mouth, the way she fit perfectly against him, like she'd been designed for this exact purpose. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sloan whispered, "We're in so much trouble." "The absolute worst kind," Gavin agreed. "HR is going to have a field day. Jason's going to spontaneously combust. The board might actually fire us both. Probably." Sloan laughed, really laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "So what do we do?" "We're careful. We're professional at work. We don't give anyone ammunition." Gavin tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "And outside of work, we figure it out, like adults. I haven't dated anyone in 4 years. I haven't dated anyone since my wife died, so we're both terrible at this." "Perfect match then." She kissed him again, softer this time. "You should go. It's late, and if anyone sees your car in the garage at 1 a.m., questions will be asked." He didn't want to leave. But she was right. So he kissed her forehead, grabbed his jacket, and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "Sloan, for the record, I'm terrified too. But I haven't felt this alive in 7 years. So, whatever happens next, thank you for that." She smiled, that soft, genuine smile. "Go home, Brooks. Dream about something other than algorithms." "I will now." The next morning, everything fell apart. Gavin arrived at work to find the lobby buzzing with unusual energy. Security guards were turning away reporters. The receptionist looked frazzled, and Amanda practically ran up to him the moment he stepped off the elevator. "Have you seen it?" she asked, breathless. "Seen what?" She held up her phone. The headline from TechCrunch screamed, "From Janitor to Genius, How Mercer Dynamics' New Hire Went From Mopping Floors to Saving the Company." Gavin's stomach dropped. "Oh no. Oh yes, it's everywhere. Forbes, Business Insider, even the Washington Post picked it up. Someone leaked the story about how you were working custodial and then solved the algorithm crisis." Amanda scrolled frantically. "They're calling it the feel-good story of the year. The single dad who never gave up on his dreams. The CEO who saw potential where everyone else saw a janitor. It's going viral, Gavin." "Who leaked it?" "No idea. But whoever did made sure to include lots of details. Your MIT background, Sarah's death, Lena, the whole thing." She looked genuinely sympathetic. "I'm sorry. I know you value your privacy." Gavin pulled out his phone. 15 missed calls. 37 text messages. His email inbox was exploding, and every major tech publication had requests for interviews, photos, comment. He called Sloan. She answered on the first ring. "I know," she said without preamble. "I'm handling it. Don't talk to any reporters. Don't respond to any requests. Come straight to my office." The walk to the executive floor felt like a death march. Everyone was staring, whispering. Some smiled encouragingly. Others looked skeptical or resentful. By the time Gavin reached Sloan's office, he felt like he'd run a marathon. She was on the phone, her expression thunderous. When she saw him, she held up one finger, wait, and finished her call. "I don't care what the optics are, Richard. We're not commenting. Yes, the story is true. No, we're not making Brooks available for interviews. Because he's an employee, not a publicity stunt. If the board has concerns, they can bring them to me directly." She hung up without saying goodbye. "Sit." Gavin sat. "This is bad," Sloan said bluntly. Not for the company, actually. Our stock jumped 2 points this morning because apparently investors love heartwarming narratives. But for you personally, this is a nightmare. How did this get out? I have my suspicions. Her jaw tightened. Jason was seen having drinks with a TechCrunch reporter 2 nights ago. Can't prove he's the leak, but the timing is convenient. He's trying to make me look like a charity case. He's trying to undermine your credibility by turning you into a feel-good story instead of a legitimate hire. Sloan stood up, pacing. The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow. They want to discuss whether your hiring was appropriate given the circumstances. Some members are concerned this looks like a publicity stunt rather than a merit-based decision. Maybe I should just resign, save you the trouble. Don't you dare. Sloan's voice was sharp. You earned your position. The work you've done in 6 weeks has generated $47 million in new contracts. You've revolutionized how our teams think about AI development. You belong here, and I'm not letting Jason or anyone else push you out because they're uncomfortable with your story. What do you need me to do? Survive tomorrow. The board meeting is at 9. You'll present everything you've accomplished since joining the company. Metrics, results, client testimonials. We're going to make it impossible for them to claim you're anything other than the best hire I've made in 5 years. Gavin nodded, but inside dread was spreading like poison. Because he knew how these things went. The board didn't care about metrics. They cared about optics, about comfort, about maintaining the status quo. And he was the opposite of status quo. That night, Lena asked, "Dad, why are people calling our house?" Because some reporters wrote a story about me, about how I used to clean buildings, and now I help with computers. That's not a bad story. No, baby, it's not. But sometimes people don't like when things change too fast, and me changing jobs so quickly makes some people nervous. Lena thought about this, her face serious. Marcus's mom says people get scared when the wrong person turns out to be right. Is that what's happening? Gavin pulled her into a hug, amazed as always by her wisdom. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Then those people are dumb. You're the rightest person I know. That's not a word. It should be. The board meeting the next morning was a bloodbath disguised as professional discourse. Gavin presented his results, the contracts won, the systems improved, the revenue generated. The numbers were irrefutable. But numbers, he learned, didn't matter when pride was at stake. Mr. Brooks, said Margaret Chen, a board member who'd made her fortune in biotech. No one is questioning your recent contributions. What we're questioning is the process by which you were hired. Did Ms. Mercer follow proper protocols? Were other candidates considered? Or was this decision made impulsively based on a single observation? I followed every protocol, Sloan said coldly. Brooks demonstrated exceptional skill. I offered him a position. He accepted. End of story. But the optics, another board member began. The optics are that we found brilliant talent in an unexpected place and had the wisdom to recognize it. That should be celebrated, not questioned. Jason, sitting in the corner, as the R&D representative, spoke up. With respect, Ms. Mercer, the optics are that you made a romantic decision disguised as a business one. The room went silent. Gavin felt his blood turn to ice. Excuse me. Sloan's voice was dangerously quiet. I've observed your interactions with Mr. Brooks, the private meetings, the late nights in your office, the preferential treatment. Jason's smile was poisonous. It's inappropriate at best, potentially actionable at worst, and it calls into question every decision you've made regarding his employment. You're out of line, Sloan said, but her face had gone pale. Am I? Or am I the only one willing to say what everyone's thinking? Jason looked around the room. This isn't about Brooks's intelligence. It's about whether our CEO can make objective decisions when she's personally involved with an employee. That's a legitimate governance concern. Gavin stood up. Every eye turned to him. You want to know if Ms. Mercer's judgment is compromised? Fine, let's talk about judgment. His voice was steady cold. 6 weeks ago, I solved a problem that 23 engineers, including you, Jason, couldn't crack. Since then, I've helped secure 4 major contracts totaling $63 million. I've improved our AI development process, trained 3 teams on new methodologies, and consistently delivered results that exceed expectations. He turned to the board. None of that has anything to do with my personal relationship with anyone in this company. It has to do with the fact that I'm good at what I do. But if my presence here makes this company uncomfortable, if my story is too messy for your corporate image, then I'll make this easy for everyone. Gavin, don't. Sloan started. I resign, effective immediately. He pulled the resignation letter he'd written at 3 a.m. from his pocket, because he'd known somehow that it would come to this. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope you find someone whose background is more suitable. He walked out before anyone could respond, before he could see the look on Sloan's face, before the anger and humiliation could turn into something uglier. In the elevator, his hands shook. By the time he reached the parking garage, he was fighting tears. And when he sat in his car, the same car where he'd Googled Sloan 6 weeks ago and thought maybe his life was changing, he finally let himself break. He'd had it. For 6 perfect weeks, he'd had a job that used his brain, a salary that meant Lena could have dance lessons and art classes, a future that felt bright. And he'd lost it because Jason was vindictive and the board was cowardly, and he'd been stupid enough to fall for his boss. Gavin drove home in a daze, picked up Lena from school, thank God it was early dismissal day, made her a snack and tried to smile while she chattered about her day. "Dad, you seem sad," she said finally. "I'm okay, kiddo." "Did you lose your job?" He should have known she'd figure it out. "Yeah, I did. Because people got scared." Something like that. Lena climbed into his lap, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "That's really dumb. You're the best worker ever." "Thank you, baby." "Are we gonna be okay?" "We're always okay. You and me, we're a team. We'll figure it out." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in her strawberry shampoo, grounding himself in what actually mattered. "I love you more than anything in the whole world. I love you more than art class and chocolate combined. That's a lot." Despite everything, Gavin smiled. That night after Lena was in bed, he sat at their tiny kitchen table and opened his laptop. Time to update his resume. Time to start searching for work. Time to figure out how to survive on savings until he found something, anything, that would keep them afloat. His phone buzzed. "Sloan, we need to talk." He turned off his phone. 3 days passed. Gavin didn't answer Sloan's calls or texts. He couldn't. Every time he thought about her, he felt the sting of humiliation all over again. Not because of her, never because of her, but because he'd let himself believe he could have both. The career and the relationship. The respect and the romance. He'd been naive, and Lena would pay the price for his naivety. On the 4th day, Lena came home from school with a project. "We're supposed to write thank you letters to someone who changed our life," she announced. "I wrote mine to Ms. Sloan." Gavin's heart clenched. "Lena, honey, I don't think—" "I already put it in the mail, with our address on it so she knows where to write back." Lena pulled out her copy to show him. The letter was written in careful crayon. "Dear Ms. Sloan, thank you for believing in my dad. Before you gave him a job, he was sad sometimes, even when he smiled. Now he smiles for real. He talks about his work at dinner and his eyes look happy. You made him remember he's smart. I know some people were mean about it. My dad says, people get scared when things change. But I think you're brave. You saw my dad was special when he was invisible. Even though he doesn't work there anymore, thank you for those weeks when he got to be himself. Love, Lena Brooks. P.S. You have smart eyes. Don't let mean people make you stop seeing good things." Gavin read it twice, tears blurring his vision. "Lena, this is beautiful. Do you think she'll like it?" "I think she'll love it, baby." What he didn't say was that the letter would probably break Sloane's heart the same way it was breaking his. But that evening at 6:30, there was a knock on their apartment door. Gavin opened it to find Sloan Mercer standing in his hallway, wearing jeans and a sweater. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail. She looked nothing like the CEO who commanded boardrooms. She looked like a woman who'd been crying. In her hand was Lena's letter. "Hi," she said softly. "Sloan. I got this today, from Lena." Her voice was thick with emotion. "And I've spent the last 4 hours sitting in my car outside this building trying to figure out what to say. So I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry the board made you feel like you didn't belong. I'm sorry Jason weaponized our relationship. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder to keep you. You couldn't have done anything different. I could have resigned." She stepped closer. "The board gave me an ultimatum, you or my position. They said if I wanted to keep you, I'd have to step down as CEO to avoid conflicts of interest." Gavin's heart stopped. "Sloan, no. You can't. That company is your life." "It was my life, until a janitor with a red marker reminded me that there are things more important than quarterly earnings." She held up the letter. "Your daughter wrote that I made you remember you're smart. But you did something bigger for me, Gavin. You made me remember I'm human. That I can want things beyond profit margins. That I can love." She stopped, swallowing hard. "That I can love someone, and it doesn't make me weak. It makes me better." "Did you say love?" "I did, and I meant it." Sloane's eyes were bright with tears. "I love you, Gavin Brooks. I love the way you explain complex systems using plumbing metaphors. I love how you talk about your daughter like she hung the moon. I love that you've been invisible for so long, and you're still the kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. And I'm here standing in your hallway, probably scaring your neighbors to tell you that if you'll have me, I'm choosing you. Not the company, not the career. You." Before Gavin could respond, Lena appeared behind him in her pajamas. "Miss Sloan, you got my letter." Sloan knelt down to Lena's level. "I did. It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever written to me. Are you here to give my dad his job back?" "I'm here to tell him that I made a mistake, and to ask if maybe I could be part of your family, if that's okay with both of you." Lena looked at Gavin. Gavin looked at Sloan. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of their tiny apartment with his daughter in dinosaur pajamas and the woman he loved in tears, Gavin made the easiest decision of his life. "Come inside," he said. "Let's talk about what happens next." Sloan Mercer had been in boardrooms with billionaires, negotiated with venture capitalists who could buy small countries, and stared down hostile takeover attempts without flinching. But sitting on Gavin Brooks's worn couch, holding a cup of tea in a chipped mug, while his 9-year-old daughter studied her with unblinking curiosity, was the most nervous she'd ever been. "So, you love my dad," Lena said matter-of-factly. "Lena." Gavin warned from the kitchen where he was making tea, because apparently that's what people did in emotionally devastating moments. "It's okay." Sloan set down the mug carefully. "Yes, Lena, I do love your dad, very much. And you want to be part of our family. If you and your dad would have me, yes." Lena tilted her head, considering. "Do you like art?" The question caught Sloan off guard. I appreciate it. Not good enough. Do you like making art? Like with glue and glitter and stuff that gets everywhere?" "I've never really tried." Lena's expression was serious. "What about pancakes? Dad makes them every Sunday. They're always a little burned, but that's part of the tradition. Can you eat burned pancakes and pretend they're good?" "I can do that." "And bedtime stories. Sometimes Dad does voices, and they're terrible, but we laugh anyway. Would you laugh at terrible voices?" Sloan felt tears prick her eyes again. "I would laugh at the most terrible voices ever." Gavin returned with tea, sitting beside Sloan, but leaving careful space between them. Lena noticed immediately. Dad, you're supposed to sit close to people you love. That's like a rule. Lena, grown-up relationships are complicated. They're only complicated because grown-ups make them complicated. Lena stood up with the authority of someone 3 times her age. Ms. Sloan loves you. You love her, don't even try to deny it. I can see it all over your face. And I think she's nice and pretty, and she has smart eyes. So the only question is, are we gonna be a family, or are we gonna be weird about it? The silence that followed was broken by Sloane's laughter, real genuine, the kind of sound she hadn't made in years. Your daughter is terrifying, she said to Gavin. I know, she gets it from her mother. He finally smiled, small, but real. Lena, can you give me and Sloan a few minutes to talk grown-up stuff? Fine, but don't mess this up, Dad. She's the best chance we've got at living somewhere with a doorman. Lena skipped off to her room, leaving them alone. Gavin turned to face Sloan properly. You can't give up your company for me. I can, and I will if that's what it takes. Sloan, you built that place. You saved it from collapse. You've dedicated a decade of your life. To what? Her voice rose slightly. To proving I was good enough. To showing my dead father I could finish what he started. I've spent 10 years building an empire, and forgot to build a life. She took his hand. These past 6 weeks with you have been more real, more meaningful than anything I've accomplished in that building. You make me want to be someone beyond my job title. You already are someone beyond your job title. Not in any way that matters, not in the way you are. Sloane's fingers tightened around his. You're a father first. A brilliant mind second. A janitor or consultant or whatever job title comes third. You know who you are without the work. I don't. And that terrifies me. Gavin was quiet for a long moment, processing. What did you tell the board? That I need a week to make my decision. They weren't happy, but they agreed. She met his eyes. Gavin, I'm not asking you to tell me what to do. This is my choice. But I need to know if you want us as much as I do. Because if you don't, I'll walk away right now. I won't make this harder than it already is. You really think I don't want this? Gavin's voice was rough. Sloan, I fell for you the night you found me at that whiteboard. Maybe before that, in some subconscious way, every time you said good morning to the janitor when everyone else looked right through me. You've been the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing I think about at night, and it's been killing me because I thought we could never... He stopped, swallowing hard. Of course I want this. I'm just terrified of what it costs. What if it doesn't cost anything? What if we both win? How? Sloan pulled out her phone and opened an email. Read this. It came in this morning. Gavin took the phone. The email was from Richard Paulson at Henderson Technologies. Ms. Mercer, we've been following the news about Gavin Brooks with interest. His story resonated with our entire executive team, particularly the concept that brilliance can be found anywhere if we're willing to look. We'd like to propose a partnership. Mr. Brooks speaks at our annual Innovation Summit in 2 weeks about unconventional talent development. We believe his perspective could revolutionize how companies approach hiring and retention. If he's no longer with Mercer Dynamics, we'd still be honored to host him. We're prepared to offer a substantial speaking fee and discuss potential consulting opportunities. They want you, Sloan said softly. Henderson, Carlisle, 3 other companies that have reached out in the past week. You've become the face of something bigger than one job, Gavin. People want to hear how you think, how you solve problems, how you bridge the gap between theory and reality. I'm not a speaker. You're exactly what this industry needs. Someone who understands both the code and the human cost. Someone who can explain why algorithms matter in language that regular people understand. She squeezed his hand. I'm not asking you to come back to Mercer Dynamics. I'm asking you to build something new. With me. What do you mean? I mean, what if I did step down as CEO? Not to run away, but to build something better. A consulting firm focused on finding overlooked talent. on teaching companies that brilliance doesn't require Ivy League credentials, on proving that the janitors and the security guards and the single parents working night shifts might be the smartest people in the building if anyone bothered to notice. Her eyes were bright with possibility. We could do this together. You bring the insight, I bring the business experience. We help companies like mine stop being blind to their own potential. Gavin stared at her. You're serious? Or, Completely. I've spent the last 4 days thinking about nothing else. This story, your story, it struck a nerve. The emails I've gotten, the calls, the interview requests. People are hungry for this message, for proof that there's another way. She moved closer. But I can't do it without you. You're the one who lived it. You're the one who can speak to it authentically. And Mercer Dynamics. Amanda can run it. She's been ready for years. The board will fight me, but ultimately they can't stop me from resigning if that's my choice. Sloan's smile was fierce now. Let them have their comfortable hierarchy. We'll build something that actually changes things. Lena's voice called from her room. Are you guys done talking yet? Because if you're gonna kiss, I want to see. I've never seen my dad kiss anyone except me, and that's different. They both laughed, the tension breaking like a fever. What do you say, Brooks? Sloan asked. Want to change the world with me? Gavin looked at this woman, this brilliant, terrifying, wonderful woman who'd walked into his life and turned it upside down in the best possible way. Then he looked toward Lena's room, where his daughter was probably listening at the door. I say we're both crazy, but yeah, let's do it. Sloan kissed him soft and sweet and full of promise. From Lena's room came the sound of muffled cheering. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Sloan announced her resignation from Mercer Dynamics at a press conference that went viral within hours. I'm proud of what we've built, she told the assembled reporters, but I'm more excited about what comes next. Finding talent that traditional systems overlook, proving that intelligence and innovation can come from anywhere. She didn't mention Gavin by name. They'd agreed to keep their relationship private for now, but everyone understood the subtext. Jason tried to paint it as a scandal, failed spectacularly when Amanda Chen, newly appointed CEO, gave an interview praising both Sloan's leadership and Gavin's contributions. Some people see change as a threat, Amanda said coolly. Others see it as an opportunity. Mercer Dynamics will continue to be the latter. The board, faced with overwhelmingly positive public reaction and stock prices that continued to climb, accepted Sloan's resignation with more grace than expected, possibly because she'd negotiated a consulting contract that kept her as a strategic advisor while freeing her from day-to-day operations. Through it all, Gavin prepared for the Henderson Summit. The speech that would either launch this new venture or prove he was completely out of his depth. The night before the summit, he couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., he found Sloan on his couch, their couch now since she'd been essentially living with them for the past week. Can't sleep either, she asked, terrified. He sat beside her. What if I bomb? What if I get up there and forget everything? What if you're brilliant? What if you say exactly what people need to hear? She pulled him close. Gavin? You've been speaking truth to power since the day you corrected that whiteboard. Tomorrow isn't different. It's just a bigger whiteboard. With 400 people watching. Who all want you to succeed. They're not there to judge. They're there to be inspired. No pressure then. Sloan smiled. You've survived worse. You survived losing Sarah, raising Lena alone, working a job that made you invisible while staying brilliant enough to solve problems no one else could. A speech is nothing compared to that. He kissed her temple. How did you get so wise? I met this janitor once. He taught me that real wisdom isn't about credentials. It's about seeing what's actually in front of you. And the Henderson Innovation Summit was held at the downtown convention center in a ballroom that could seat 500. Gavin stood backstage, palms sweating, while Richard Paulson delivered his introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about a man who was invisible for 3 years, who mopped the floors in one of the most innovative companies in our industry while possessing one of the most innovative minds, who solved a $100 million problem in 3 minutes, not because he had the right degree, but because he had the right perspective. Please welcome Gavin Brooks. The applause was deafening. Gavin walked on stage into blinding lights and a sea of faces. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm him. Then he spotted Sloan in the front row, Lena beside her in a dress she'd picked out special for today. His daughter gave him 2 thumbs up. Gavin stepped up to the microphone. "I was supposed to clean this floor tonight," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "That was supposed to be my job, mopping, emptying trash cans, making sure everything looked perfect for people who had real work to do. Important work. The kind of work that requires degrees and credentials and letters after your name." He paused, looking out at the audience. Every eye was on him. But here's what I learned in 3 years of night shift maintenance. Everyone's work is real work. The janitor who notices the leak before it becomes a flood. The security guard who remembers which employees work late and checks on them. The cafeteria worker who knows that the lead engineer is diabetic and makes sure there are sugar-free options. We're all solving problems. We're all using our intelligence. The only difference is who gets seen and who stays invisible. Heads were nodding now, people leaning forward. I have a 9-year-old daughter named Lena. When she was learning to walk, she didn't read books about bipedal locomotion. She watched, she tried, she fell, she learned. That's how real intelligence works. Not through memorization or credentials, but through observation, experimentation, adaptation. Your AI systems try to learn the same way. They watch patterns. They make mistakes. They adjust. The difference is, we expect perfection from machines but not from humans. We've got it backwards. Someone laughed. The tension in the room eased. The algorithm I fixed at Mercer Dynamics wasn't complicated because the math was hard. It was complicated because the engineers were treating it like an equation instead of a learning process. They were so focused on the theory that they forgot the practical application. Like teaching a kid to swim by lecturing them about fluid dynamics instead of just putting them in the water. More nods. More engagement. Here's what I want you to understand. The smartest person in your company might be the one you're not looking at. The brilliant solution to your impossible problem might come from the administrative assistant who's been watching your process for years and sees the inefficiency everyone else is blind to. The breakthrough innovation might be suggested by the warehouse worker who actually uses the systems you design. Gavin's voice grew stronger, more confident. We've built an entire industry on the idea that intelligence requires validation, degrees, certifications, pedigrees. But intelligence doesn't care about your resume. It cares about whether you can see patterns, solve problems, and understand how things actually work in the real world. And sometimes, often actually, the people who've been forced to survive to adapt to figure things out without resources or support, they're the ones with the sharpest minds. Because they've had to be. The ballroom was silent now, but it was the good kind of silent, the kind where people were actually listening. I'm not saying credentials don't matter. Education is important. Training is valuable. But it's not the only path to brilliance. And if we keep treating it like it is, we're going to miss the janitors who can solve our hardest problems. The night shift workers who see solutions we're too tired or too biased to notice. The people who've been invisible so long, they've forgotten they're extraordinary. He thought about Sarah, about the choice he'd made to leave MIT, about Lena and the life they'd built together. I lost my wife 7 years ago. She was brilliant PhD in molecular biology, the kind of mind that could have changed the world. But she got sick, and in her final months, she told me something I didn't understand until recently. She said, "The smartest thing you can do is see people who've been unseen." At the time, I thought she meant Lena, our daughter. But she meant everyone. All the people we walk past and ignore. All the potential we miss because we're looking in the wrong places. His voice caught slightly. In the front row, Sloan's eyes were bright with tears. So here's my challenge to you. Go back to your companies and look again. Really look. At the people in the mailroom and the cleaning crews and the support staff. At the ones who've been there for years without anyone asking what they're capable of. At the single parents and the career changers and the people who don't fit your hiring template. Ask them what they see. Listen to their ideas. Give them the chance to show you what they can do. Gavin gripped the podium. Because I promise you, somewhere in your organization right now is someone extraordinary who's been waiting their whole life for someone to notice. Someone who can solve your impossible problem. Someone who sees what you're missing. Someone who just needs one person, one single person to look at them and say, "You're brilliant," or "Show me what you can do." He stepped back from the microphone. I was that person. Sloan Mercer saw me when I was invisible. And it changed everything. Not just for me, but for her company, for the clients we served, for my daughter who got to see her dad remember he was smart, for everyone who heard this story and thought, maybe I'm not stuck, maybe I'm just waiting to be seen. His voice dropped intimate now. So be the person who sees. Be the one who looks past the resume to the human. Be the leader who understands that genius doesn't wear a suit. Sometimes it wears a uniform. Sometimes it wears exhaustion. Sometimes it wears the weight of raising a child alone and wondering if dreams are allowed to come back. Gavin smiled. They are allowed. I'm proof. And the smartest thing you can do, the absolute smartest thing, is make sure you're not the reason someone else's dreams stay invisible. He stepped away from the podium. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the ballroom erupted. 400 people rose to their feet, applause crashing over Gavin like a wave. He stood there stunned as the ovation went on and on. People were crying, cheering. Some were already pulling out phones to take notes or record clips. Richard Paulson rushed the stage, shaking Gavin's hand vigorously. That was incredible, absolutely incredible. But Gavin only saw Sloan pushing through the crowd, Lena's hand in hers. When they reached the stage stairs, Lena broke free and ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "Dad, you made everyone cry in a good way." He hugged her tight, laughing through his own tears. Then Sloan was there, and she was kissing him in front of 400 strangers, and he didn't care at all. "It landed," she whispered against his lips. "It landed," he agreed. That night, after Lena was asleep and the phone had finally stopped ringing with interview requests and speaking opportunities, Gavin and Sloan sat on the apartment balcony, tiny and overlooking a parking lot, but theirs. 17 companies want you to speak, Sloan said, scrolling through emails. 6 universities want you to lecture, and there's interest from a publisher about a book. A book about how to mop floors while being secretly smart. A book about exactly what you said today. Finding invisible talent, changing how we think about intelligence and worth. She set down her phone. This is real, Gavin. What we're building, it matters. I know. He pulled her closer. I'm just still catching up to the fact that my life changed in 6 weeks. Mine too. She rested her head on his shoulder. I spent 10 years being the Ice Queen, building walls, keeping everyone at a distance. Then a janitor with a red marker knocked down every defense I had. Best 3 minutes of my life writing on that board. Second best. Oh, what's first? Sloan smiled. Right now, this moment. Knowing that tomorrow we get to wake up and keep building something that matters. Together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker below. Inside, Lena slept peacefully, dreaming of doormen and art projects, and a future where her dad smiled for real. The apartment was still small. The balcony still overlooked a parking lot. But everything had changed, because Gavin Brooks had stopped being invisible. And Sloan Mercer had remembered how to be human. And together they were proving that the smartest thing anyone can do is see people who've been unseen. The janitor who solved the impossible. The CEO who chose love over empire. The little girl who believed in both of them. That was the real story. Not the headlines or the viral videos or the standing ovation. The real story was simpler and more profound. Sometimes the life you're meant for finds you at midnight with a mop in your hand and a whiteboard that changes everything. And if you're brave enough, if you're smart enough, you put down the mop, pick up the marker, and show the world who you really are. Gavin had done that. Sloan had seen it. And nothing would ever be the same. 3 months later, Gavin stood in what would become the headquarters of Brooks and Mercer Consulting, a converted loft space with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in so much light it hurt to look at sometimes. Sloan was on the phone with their third major client that week, her voice confident and warm in a way it never had been at Mercer Dynamics. And in the corner, Lena sat cross-legged with her laptop, working on a project that had become something far bigger than either of them had anticipated. "Dad, come look at this," Lena called out. Gavin crossed the room to where his daughter had set up what she called her creative station, a desk covered in drawings, coding notebooks, and a laptop displaying lines of code that would have impressed most professional programmers. "What am I looking at, kiddo?" Lena's Labyrinth, version 3.0. She clicked through the game she'd been building for the past month. See, the player is a janitor who has to solve puzzles to unlock different levels. But the puzzles aren't about fighting or collecting coins. They're about seeing patterns that other characters miss. Gavin watched as a pixelated janitor character moved through a digital office building, noticing things: a flickering light that revealed a hidden code, a pattern in the floor tiles that unlocked a door, a conversation between NPCs that contained the solution to an impossible equation. "Lena, this is incredible." "I know." She said it without arrogance, just pure 9-year-old confidence. "But I added something new. Watch." She navigated the janitor character to the top floor of the digital building. There, standing by a window overlooking a pixelated city, was another character, a CEO with smart eyes and dark hair pulled back in a bun. "Is that Miss Sloan?" "Yeah." Lena clicked an interaction button. The janitor and CEO characters moved closer, and suddenly they were holding hands under a sky filled with binary stars, ones and zeros floating like constellations. A message appeared on the screen in careful crayon-like font. "Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is see the person standing right in front of you." Gavin's throat tightened. "Lena, that's beautiful." "There's more." She clicked again, and a new message appeared. "Will you be part of our family forever?" "I made it for you," Lena said quietly. "For when you're ready to ask her. You know, the real question." Gavin knelt beside his daughter's chair. "What makes you think I'm going to ask her a question?" "Dad, come on. You look at her the way I look at chocolate chip pancakes. Like she's the best thing ever, and you can't believe you get to have her." Lena turned to face him. "Plus, I heard you on the phone with Grandma last week talking about rings. You're too smart for your own good. I get it from you. And Mom." She smiled, but it was tinged with something bittersweet. "Do you think Mom would like Ms. Sloan?" The question hit him like a physical thing. Gavin pulled Lena into his lap, holding her close. "I think your mom would love that we're happy. That we found someone who makes us laugh and challenges us and shows up for us." His voice was rough. "And I think she'd especially love that you helped me see it was okay to want this, to want more than just surviving." "I miss her," Lena whispered. "Me too, baby. Every single day. But I'm glad we have Sloan now. Is that okay? To miss Mom and love Sloan?" "That's more than okay. That's exactly how it should be." Gavin kissed the top of her head. "Love doesn't replace love. It just grows. There's always room for more." Sloan's voice drifted over from across the loft. "Gavin, they want us in Seattle next month. Full workshop for their entire executive team." "Tell them yes," he called back. "I already did." She ended her call and walked over to them, seeing immediately that something emotional had happened. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," Lena announced, hopping off Gavin's lap. "I showed Dad the new level, the one with the proposal. Sloane's eyebrows rose. The proposal. In the game, the janitor asks the CEO to be family forever. Lena looked between them with exaggerated innocence. It's just a game, though, not real life or anything. Right, just a game. Sloane caught Gavin's eye, and something passed between them, understanding amusement, and a question that hung unspoken in the air. That Sunday morning, Gavin woke to the smell of something burning. He bolted upright, panic flooding through him, until he heard laughter from the kitchen. Lena's giggles mixing with Sloane's attempts to shush her. "I think we've created a legitimate fire hazard," Sloane was saying. "It's fine, Dad burns them every week. This is tradition." Lena sounded absolutely delighted. Gavin padded into the kitchen to find Sloane standing at the stove in one of his old MIT t-shirts, her hair loose around her shoulders, wielding a spatula like it might attack her. The pancakes on the griddle were definitely more carbon than carbohydrate. "I can take over," he offered. "Absolutely not." Sloane pointed the spatula at him. "Lena informed me that if I'm going to be part of this family, I need to master the Sunday pancake ritual. Apparently burned is an essential characteristic." "Essential," Lena confirmed from the table where she was setting out plates. "It's not breakfast if it doesn't taste a little bit like mistakes." Gavin leaned against the doorframe, watching them, his daughter, and the woman he loved working together in easy partnership, and something in his chest cracked open. This was what he hadn't known he'd been missing. Not just Sloane, but this. The casual intimacy of Sunday mornings, the laughter over burnt food, the sense that his small family of two had expanded into something bigger and somehow more complete. "Stop staring and come help," Sloane said, but she was smiling. "Your daughter has very high standards for authentically terrible pancakes." They ate breakfast together, the three of them crowded around the small kitchen table. The pancakes were indeed burned, and they were perfect. Lena chattered about her game, about school, about how her friend Marcus said his mom was thinking of leaving her job because nobody there appreciated her ideas. "Maybe she should call you guys," Lena suggested. "You find invisible people, right? We help companies recognize talent they're overlooking," Gavin corrected gently. "Same thing." Lena took another bite of pancake. "Can I come to the office after school tomorrow? I want to show Marcus's mom my game. Maybe it'll help her remember she's smart." Sloane reached over and squeezed Lena's hand. "You can come any time, Lena. You're our inspiration, the whole reason this company exists." "I know. I'm basically a co-founder." Lena said it so seriously that both adults burst out laughing. Later, after Lena had gone to her room to work on her game, Gavin and Sloane cleaned up the kitchen together. It was domestic and ordinary, and Gavin loved every second of it. "I got an email yesterday," Sloane said, scrubbing a plate. "From Jason." Gavin's hands stilled in the soapy water. What did he want? To apologize, apparently. She handed him the plate to rinse. He said watching our company take off made him realize he'd been fighting change instead of embracing it. That he was wrong about you, about us, about everything. Do you believe him? I don't know, but I think he's scared. Amanda told me 3 of his projects have failed in the past 2 months. He's on thin ice at Mercer, and he knows it. She dried her hands and turned to face Gavin. She also told me something else. The board wanted to know if we'd consider coming back, both of us, offering us whatever positions we wanted. Gavin searched her face. What did you tell them? That we built something better, that we're not interested in going backward. Sloane moved closer. But I wanted to make sure you felt the same way, that you don't regret leaving. Are you kidding, Sloane? I get to work with brilliant people who've been overlooked their entire lives. I get to watch their faces when someone finally sees them. I get to come home every night at 6 because we built a company that respects boundaries. I get to have breakfast with you and Lena and burn pancakes and call it tradition. He pulled her close. I've never been less interested in going backward. She kissed him, soft and sweet, tasting like maple syrup and coffee, and home. Good. Because I have plans for us. Big ones. How big? Book deal big. TED Talk big. Changing how the entire industry thinks about talent big. Her eyes sparkled. I'm thinking we could... Ms. Sloan. Lena's voice called from her room. Can you come here? I need someone with smart eyes to check my code. Sloan laughed. Duty calls. She disappeared into Lena's room, leaving Gavin alone in the kitchen. He finished the dishes, slowly, listening to the sound of Lena explaining her game logic, while Sloan asked questions that made his daughter think deeper. Push harder, reach further. This was his life now. This impossible, beautiful, chaotic life. And he was ready for the next step. That evening, after Lena was asleep, Gavin found Sloan on the couch with her laptop reviewing proposals for their next workshop series. He sat beside her, and she automatically curled into him, her head on his shoulder. Lena showed me her game today, he said quietly. The proposal level. She's subtle as a brick. She gets that from her mother, too. He smiled. But she's not wrong about what she's suggesting. Sloan went very still. Gavin. I know we've only been together a few months. I know by any conventional timeline this is too fast. But Sloan, I've lived enough life to know when something is right. He shifted so he could look at her properly. You've become part of our family, part of our routines and our Sunday mornings and our inside jokes. Lena adores you. He took a breath. I love you, completely, and I want this to be permanent. Are you... Her voice caught. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Gavin reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a single diamond, not huge, not showy, just beautiful. Sloan Mercer, will you be part of our family forever? Not just in spirit, but officially, legally, in the burned pancakes and late-night coding sessions and every moment in between. Tears were streaming down Sloan's face. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, except maybe that whiteboard equation. He smiled through his own tears. Say yes. Please say yes. Yes. She was laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, of course, yes. I love you. I love Lena. I love our weird, impossible life. Yes to all of it. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she kissed him like she was trying to memorize the moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she whispered, Should we tell Lena now? She probably already knows. She's been planning this longer than I have. As if summoned, Lena's door creaked open. She appeared in the hallway in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes in a way that was definitely fake. Did I hear something exciting? She asked innocently. Come here, you little spy, Gavin said. Lena ran over and launched herself between them on the couch. Did you ask her? Did she say yes? Can I be the flower girl? Can we get a dog? Yes, yes, obviously, and we'll discuss it, Gavin said, laughing. Lena threw her arms around both of them. I knew it. I told Sophie it would happen before summer. She owes me her dessert tomorrow. You bet on us, Sloan asked, incredulous. Obviously. It was a sure thing. You guys are perfect together. Lena settled between them, completely comfortable. Does this mean we can move somewhere with a doorman now? We'll see, Gavin said. But wherever we live, as long as we're together. It'll be home, Lena finished. I know, Dad. You're very predictable when you're happy. They sat like that for a long time, the three of them tangled together on the couch, and Gavin felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died, complete, whole, like all the broken pieces had finally found their way back together into something new and beautiful. 6 months later, Gavin stood in front of an audience of 2,000 people at a TED conference in Vancouver. Beside him on the screen was a slide showing Lena's game, the pixelated janitor and CEO holding hands under binary stars. My daughter built this game, he told the audience. She's 10 years old, and she understands something that took me 34 years to learn. Intelligence isn't about credentials or titles or how much money you make. It's about seeing patterns, solving problems, recognizing potential in unexpected places. He clicked to the next slide, a photo of himself in his janitor's uniform, mop in hand. This is who I was 18 months ago. Invisible, working night shifts, brilliant in ways nobody bothered to notice. And then someone looked at me, really looked, and everything changed. Another slide. Sloan in her office that first morning after she'd found him at the whiteboard. Sloan Mercer saw potential where everyone else saw a name tag. She gave me a chance when logic said she shouldn't. And in doing so, she didn't just change my life. She changed how I understood what's possible when we stop making assumptions about who deserves opportunities. He looked out at the audience, at all those faces hungry for something real. Here's what I want you to understand: somewhere in your organization right now is someone extraordinary who's waiting to be seen. Someone whose intelligence has been overlooked because they don't fit your template. Someone who could solve your impossible problem if you just stop looking past them. The audience was silent, leaning forward. It might be the security guard who notices patterns in your data you've been ignoring. The administrative assistant who understands your workflow better than your efficiency consultants. The warehouse worker who's been watching your logistics fail and knows exactly how to fix it. They're there, waiting, hoping someone will finally see them. Gavin's voice grew stronger. Sloan saw me, and I've spent the past year learning to see others. Our consulting firm has helped 43 companies find their invisible geniuses. And you know what we've discovered. Every single one had someone brilliant hiding in plain sight. Every single one. He clicked to a final slide, a photo from their wedding 3 months ago. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Lena in a purple dress she'd designed herself, standing between Gavin and Sloan, beaming like she'd orchestrated the whole thing. Which in a way she had. This is my family. The janitor who became a consultant. The CEO who chose people over profit. And the 10-year-old who understood before any of us that the smartest thing you can do is see someone who's been unseen. He stepped away from the podium. So I'm challenging you. Go back to your companies, your organizations, your teams. Look again. Really look. At the people you've been walking past. The talent you've been overlooking. The brilliance you've been missing because you were too busy looking at resumes instead of potential. His voice dropped intimate. Because somewhere out there is another person like me. Mopping floors while solving impossible equations in their head. Waiting for one person, just one, to notice, to care, to say, "You're brilliant. Show me what you can do." Gavin smiled. Be that person. Be the one who sees. And watch what happens when genius finally becomes visible. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. But Gavin barely heard it. He was looking at the front row where Sloan sat with Lena on her lap, both of them crying and smiling and mouthing the words, "We love you." After the conference, after the interviews and the photographs and the networking that came with this new life, Gavin and Sloan and Lena walked along the Vancouver waterfront. It was sunset, the sky painted in impossible colors, and Lena was running ahead of them, chasing seagulls and laughing. "Do you ever miss it?" Sloan asked. The simplicity of the custodial work, the clear boundaries, the anonymity. Gavin thought about it honestly. Sometimes, when the travel gets exhausting or the pressure builds. But then I remember what we're building, the lives we're changing, the people we're helping see themselves differently. He squeezed her hand. And I remember that night at the whiteboard, how it felt to use my brain again, to matter in a way I'd forgotten was possible. You always mattered. I know that now, but I didn't then. You taught me that being seen isn't about validation. It's about connection. About someone recognizing the fullness of who you are and choosing to honor it. Sloan stopped walking, pulling him close. I didn't save you, Gavin. You saved yourself. I just had the privilege of watching. We saved each other, he corrected. You forgot you were human. I forgot I was brilliant. and somehow we helped each other remember. Lena ran back to them breathless. "There's a street performer doing magic tricks. Can we watch, please, Mom?" "Of course," Sloan said. They stood together watching a young man in worn clothes perform card tricks for small crowds of tourists. He was good, really good, and Gavin noticed the MIT class ring on his finger, tarnished and old. After the performance, as people dropped money in his hat, Gavin approached him. "You went to MIT?" he said, nodding at the ring. The young man's face shuddered. "Yeah, long time ago. Different life." "What did you study?" "Computer engineering. Got my master's in AI and machine learning." His laugh was bitter. "For all the good it did me." Gavin pulled out a business card. "I want you to call me Monday morning. Brooks and Mercer Consulting. We help companies find overlooked talent, and I think you might be exactly what several of our clients are looking for." The young man stared at the card like it might disappear. "I don't understand." "I was a janitor 18 months ago, mopping floors in a billion-dollar AI company while knowing I could do the work better than the people in the corner offices. Someone saw me, gave me a chance, changed my entire life." Gavin smiled. "Now it's my turn to see you, so call me. Let's talk about what you're capable of when someone's actually paying attention." Tears welled in the young man's eyes. "Thank you. I thank you." As they walked away, Sloan wrapped her arm around Gavin's waist. "That was beautiful. That was us, 18 months ago, just waiting for someone to look." Lena took both their hands, swinging between them. "I think that's the best thing about being a family. We're like a pattern recognition team. We see things other people miss, and then we fix them." "When did you get so wise?" Gavin asked. "I've always been wise. You just started paying attention." She grinned. "Also, I'm hungry. Can we get ice cream?" They found a small shop overlooking the water and sat outside watching the sun finish setting. Lena got chocolate chip with sprinkles. Sloan got vanilla, because I'm predictable, she said with a smile. Gavin got strawberry because it was Sarah's favorite, and even now he liked the reminder that love didn't end, it just transformed into new shapes. "I have an announcement," Lena said through a mouthful of ice cream. "I submitted Lena's Labyrinth to a game design competition. For kids." "You did?" Gavin sat up straighter. "When?" "Last week. The winners get announced next month, and if I win, I want to donate the prize money to help other kids whose parents work invisible jobs, like you used to, Dad, so their families can have opportunities too." Sloan's eyes filled with tears. "Lena, that's incredible." "I know. It was Ms. Amanda's idea. She emailed me and said the best way to honor Dad's story is to help other people write their own." Lena took another bite. "So that's what I'm doing. Using my smart eyes to see other people who need seeing." Gavin couldn't speak. His daughter, his brilliant, compassionate, extraordinary daughter, understood the mission better than he did. "I'm so proud of you," he finally managed. "I'm proud of you too, Dad. You went from mopping floors to changing the world. That's pretty cool." "We all changed the world," Sloan said softly. "Together. As a family." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Somewhere in the city behind them, the young street performer was probably looking at Gavin's business card and wondering if it was real. Somewhere, companies were starting to look at their custodial staff and administrative teams with new eyes. Somewhere, invisible people were becoming seen. And here on a bench overlooking the Pacific Ocean, a former janitor sat with his CEO wife and their daughter, who'd learned to see patterns in everything, eating ice cream, and knowing that the smartest thing any of them had ever done was recognize each other's brilliance. "I love our life," Lena announced suddenly. "Like so much, even though we still don't have a doorman." "We'll get there," Gavin promised. "I don't actually care about the doorman anymore," she admitted. "I just like saying it because it makes you laugh." "You're ridiculous," Sloan said, but she was laughing too. "I'm perfect," Lena corrected. And so are you guys, even when you burn pancakes. Gavin looked at his wife, his brilliant, fierce, wonderful wife who'd chosen to see him when the world said he was invisible, and at his daughter who'd never doubted for a moment that he was extraordinary, and at the life they'd built together from courage and love and the simple revolutionary act of really looking at each other. He'd spent 3 years being unseen. But those years hadn't been wasted. They'd taught him humility and resilience and the value of showing up even when nobody noticed. They'd taught him that intelligence without purpose was just theory, but intelligence applied with love could change everything. The janitor who solved the impossible problem hadn't just fixed an algorithm. He'd fixed himself. He'd remembered who he was beneath the grief and the exhaustion and the uniform. And in doing so, he'd helped others remember too. That was the real genius. Not the math or the code or the contracts won, but the willingness to be seen fully and to see others the same way. To recognize that every person carries brilliance if someone would just stop long enough to notice. Gavin Brooks had been invisible for 3 years, but he'd never stopped being brilliant. He'd just been waiting for the right person to look at him and say, "I see you. Show me what you can do." Sloan had said it. Lena had believed it. And together they'd built something far greater than any algorithm or company or title. They'd built a family, a home, a future where genius wore whatever uniform it wanted, and the only thing that mattered was whether you had the courage to be seen. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is pick up a red marker and change a whiteboard. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is let someone love you enough to see who you really are. Gavin had done both, and his life had become extraordinary. Not because he'd stopped mopping floors, but because he'd never stopped being brilliant. And someone had finally noticed.